So, Ali, your story has really been everywhere over the past couple of months, and you detransitioned, and people might know a little bit about the story. We're going to go into it in detail, but I wanted to start with what it's like to share your story because I imagine you get a lot of reactions. How has that response been?
Well, at first I wasn't sure whether to share my story. I'm a very open person. I'm a social media personality, so I always like to share my journey. But I wasn't sure at first because, firstly, I didn't really know what to describe this as. Because detransitioning, we're only starting to hear about it now. But I started to research it, and then when I saw these kids in America, you've got Chloe Cole, you've got a girl called Layla Jane. They have been through horrendous trauma from having these surgeries and hormones. I looked at these girls and I thought, these are 18-year-olds and they are speaking openly about this on the internet. And they are getting tremendous hate and backlash, which was just horrific to see, because not only have they been abused and betrayed by the adults that pushed them into transitioning, but they have also, now been double victimized because now they're getting all this abuse and hate. So I saw that and I thought, you know what, I'm going to speak up and, share my story because it might help other people come forward and share their story. And also, I'm an adult, so I can kind of take the flack from these haters and these trolls, because I do social media, so I get used to trolls and stuff. So I thought, I can take their flack and try and protect these kids from getting this online abuse. And really help other people come out and share their story. And it's really disheartening to see somebody that detransitions or somebody that realizes they were pushed into it. They get tremendous backlash, and it's almost Billy. It's to silence them. These people want to silence these people because they are scared of their narrative falling apart. They are scared of the truth coming out because they like to present this as a dream. It's a fantasy. You change your gender, you are automatically happy for the rest of your life, which is simply not the case. Many of these young kids, after transitioning, after a few months, a lot of them already have mental health struggles, but this only worsens it with, suicidal tendencies, depression. They now have a hormonal imbalance. So, it's really, really dangerous what they're doing to these kids. So, I felt like I was compelled to speak out.
Yeah, well, and you're not afraid because you've dealt with social media, like you said. So, this to you was sort of a new turn in a world that you already knew. You've probably gotten a lot of support too. What has that been like? Because you have a unique story, and we're going to get into it again for those who don't know. But what has it been like to sort of hear from the people who are coming alongside you at the same time?
Well, firstly, part of my detransition was actually rediscovering faith. So I used to go to church with my school as a young kid, so in elementary school. But then in high school, I was just I didn't really believe in any of that. I didn't as a teenager, you don't always focus in religious education classes. So I'd lost touch with that. I always believed in some kind of higher power, and then I really rediscovered my faith journey because I needed some guidance in my life. I was very, very lost, and this really helped me. And I have to say, the Christian community are the most kind, inclusive, incredible, non-judgmental community. They really are so embracing of anyone. No matter what you've been through. We all sin, we all do things that aren't necessarily the best thing. But it's about recognizing that, dealing with it, and then trying to learn from that experience in order to help others. So that's the message that Christians, since I've been going to church, have been teaching me. Is like as guilty as I feel about my struggles before and how what I put my family through, what I put other people through, I have to learn to live with that because I can't take it back. It's happened, but I can learn from that and I can use that to try and help others. So the Christian community have been amazing. I've had so much support in America from mums, from dads, from parents, so many messaging me and telling me their kids are struggling with gender dysphoria. And, it's so many teens now, Billy, that have this struggle. And it's a very recent phenomenon. So I've had, so many amazing parents. I've had so many politicians, obviously not Democrats because they're the ones pushing gender affirming care, but, I've had a lot of amazing Republican politicians and personalities that have really given me the chance to speak with their audience and constituents and to try and, you know, raise the alarm about, this is a harmful trend. In 5 years down the line, Billy, we're going to see millions of teens that have been mutilated and they are going to be struggling for the rest of their life with physical and mental health complications.
Well, one of the big things, obviously, Hollywood really pushed this narrative. It was sort of pushed low key. That has exploded, though. It's everywhere. And you've been commenting a lot on this. You have people who have transitioned, who are becoming brand ambassadors for almost every brand. It's sort of become this huge thing. You have the Drag Queen Story Hour debate. All of these things seem to be happening at the same time, where you have a lot of young people struggling with their identity. When you look at that, what do you think is driving that? Why such a sort of a push in that direction suddenly culturally by these brands?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. The New York Post actually published a very interesting article the other day talking about the Corporate Equality Index. So this is what the Fortune 500 companies are using, and they basically get a score based on how woke they are. So how many trans people, LGBT people they include in their ad campaigns. And we have to think trans people are less than 0.6% of the population. 1.6 million people identify as trans or non-binary in the United States. Yet this corporate equality index is basically telling all of these companies, you need to put trans people, you need to put all these different minorities at front and center of your campaigns. And the people behind this is actually the world's largest LGBT lobby group, the Human Rights Campaign, which also receives multi-million dollars of donations from George Soros's Open Foundation. So, he's known for pushing this kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons these companies are getting scored based on how woke they are. And if they don't, feature all these people, they kind of, they have the same investors and stuff. They get a lot of pressure from their shareholders and investors to become more woke. So, we're seeing that. And what's really sad, Billy, is that kids, like you said, kids are watching these influencers like Dylan Mulvaney. They're watching RuPaul's Drag Race. And, it's everywhere, Billy. As you said, it's in the schools, it's in Hollywood, it's in movies. Every single brand now has like Dylan Mulvaney as the face, basically. And what that's doing is it's telling children that the only way for you to stand out in this world is to become like Dylan Mulvaney, is to become transgender and change your gender, because this will make you special. This will make you famous. This will make you popular. This is the only way. And, as a teenager, Billy, every teenager wants to be popular. They want to fit in, especially now with social media. Everyone wants to be an influencer. Most kids do. So when they see that, they see this is the only way to be successful. And it's pushed so, so hard. These gender clinics are pushing it. We have over 60 gender clinics, pediatric clinics across the US. There were none 10, 15 years ago. So it's a real push. It's everywhere, Billy. And, this is why, I'm fighting back. This is why other people are speaking out now. Women are speaking out, detransitions, because it's now or never, Billy. So many kids are having their lives ruined. And we're going to see this down the line, 5, 10 years down the line. We're going to see so many kids that regret being pushed into their transitions. And, by then it's, what can you do, Billy? You've changed the body completely. The brain has been changed. You now have bone density issues. You have an increased risk of a heart attack. It's irreversible.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that people's stories aren't being heard, I think for me, whenever people are being silenced and nobody wants to talk to them in the mainstream media, I get concerned. And that's how I felt about this, because people like you, others, I mean, you have a platform, so you're breaking through. You mentioned Chloe. There are a number of other people who are finally able to share their story. But when it comes to young people, especially, because when we're talking about young people, that's a very unique circumstance. As you said, you change a young person's body. That is a lifelong decision that cannot be reversed many times. And so, as we're sort of looking at that, I think it's incredibly important we hear stories. And as you're talking, you're mentioning parents. I know there are a lot of people who want to know more about your story, who they hear what you went through and they glean some inspiration, maybe if their kids are struggling. What was sort of the impetus for you? And I'm sure it's complicated. Feel free to go as deep as you need to on this, but that made you start to feel as though you were going to make the initial transition.
Right. So I talk about all of this in my book, Gender Madness, and it's basically, there's a combination of factors. Like with most people that we see these teens, it's a combination. So, I do admit now I was going through a mental health struggle, and, I'd struggled with, in my teen years, severe bullying, and everybody used to say I was like a girl or I was feminine or I had women's breasts because I had a lot of fat around my chest. So, I always used to get called a girl. As a kid, I was always more feminine. I used to play with girls' toys. All my friends at the elementary school were girls. So, it was always like that. And, getting all that bullying and then having these questions in my head my whole life. When I became an adult, I actually moved to South Korea, and South Korea is very famous for plastic surgery. You can't avoid it. It's literally every billboard is advertising surgery. And I was like, no, maybe this is a chance for me to start and change who I am, to erase the old me and to try and replace me with a completely new identity. So I started doing that, started doing surgeries, and I became very addicted to doing the surgeries because it was like, it's almost like self-harming, putting yourself through that because you hate the way you look, you hate the way you identity, and people have always been mean to you. It's a form of self-harm. Like, I almost kind of at the time enjoyed putting myself through these horrific surgeries. I mean, I've had my jawbone shaved, I've had 6 nose surgeries, I've had 3 eye surgeries, and with my jaw I couldn't speak for 2 weeks, I couldn't eat, I had to eat liquid, and it was very, very difficult. I've put myself through a lot, and at the time I felt great for a few months. I felt, wow, I finally feel beautiful. I just started doing that more and more. And then I still wasn't happy. So then I started really questioning my gender again. And it's everywhere, Billy. I use TikTok, I'm a TikToker. Everywhere you go, you're being pushed these ideas. And sometimes it's very subtle. You see a TikTok, and then the next day you see more of these videos. Then suddenly, every day, this is the new norm. And, I kind of I was indoctrinated to some extent by that. And then everybody around me was saying, the reason you're not happy, the reason you're doing all these surgeries is because you're meant to be a trans woman. So I underwent facial feminization. So I basically had my face reconstructed to make it feminine. And that included having my eyebrow bones shaved, my forehead bones, my hairline lowered, an eye lift. Really, I did 11 surgeries in one day. And, I
Wow.
was happy. I was happy for a few months. And as with anyone that becomes trans, Billy, you get so much positive reinforcement. That's all you hear. Wow, you're amazing. You're stunning. You look incredible. This is the real you. So, if you're in a vulnerable position, you're struggling with mental health, that's all you want to hear, right? So, I was hearing all that. And then I got to a point where I was like, I wanted to continue with this journey and start doing more invasive surgeries. And I really had to reflect on that because, that it could kill me. I've had so much surgery. So I was reflecting on that, and I was like, my family were in despair. I was losing so many friends because they just
What
thought,
were your, if you don't mind me asking, what were your family members saying as you were going through these surgeries? Because I imagine that was traumatic for them. Were you getting pushback? What was their reaction to it?
yeah, absolutely. I got a lot of pushback. I mean, they tried to stop me every time, and I was very headstrong at the time. Every time I would have surgery, I wouldn't tell anyone. I would go to a foreign country. I've been to Turkey, Korea, China, America. I would just go to a different country and do surgery in secret. And then I would post about it 2 weeks later with the results, and get all that positive validation on social media. And it was so traumatic for my family, and I lost touch with them many times because of this. And at the time when you're really struggling with your identity, you do not see that. All you can think about is in your head that you want to look a certain way, you want to be loved, you want to be praised. You don't understand other people's objections. So it wasn't until I took a step back and saw that, and I realized, oh my God, I've caused so much harm to my family and my friends and people that follow me. They might be influenced by me. And, I felt so guilty. I can't explain. Like, I had so many sleepless nights. And I started going to church because I wanted to deal with that, and I wanted to, try to see if it was possible for me to turn my life around because, it was only going to get worse. And, thankfully, I started going to church regularly, and I was able to, realize what I was doing and how harmful it was, and, able to reverse that.
I mean, I would imagine, and I can't speak for you, but you're at this point where you've done all these surgeries, right? And you have to make a decision, right? Was there a struggle within you, even though you were recognizing this of, well, I've already gone this far? Because I've talked to some other people who have detransitioned and they've had this struggle of, I can't even go back. Like, how would I go back? What do I do? Take me through that a little bit because or maybe you didn't have that, but I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, let me just say on that point, actually, there's no support out there for people that detransition. So these pediatric clinics that perform these surgeries, they will do nothing to help these teens if they decide to detransition. There's nothing you can do. Once you've taken all those hormones, Billy, your body is changed beyond repair. So it's very, very sad, but they don't even help these kids. There have been whistleblowers in the St. Louis, Missouri clinic. They said that the doctors basically didn't care. Once the kid was out the clinic, that was it. It's not their problem. When parents were trying to say the kids had a problem, they said it's not our problem. They're outside the clinic now, so there's no support out there. So for me personally, it was very limited what I was looking at online. I just made a personal decision. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. To get back to being a guy, and I just told everyone about it. And then I saw the stories of detransition, and I started to research it. And I thought, God, these people have been through what I've been through, basically, and they don't have any support. There's nobody out there helping them. There's nobody being a voice for them and trying to give them a platform to share their experience. So, so I was going through my detransition, and I saw them, and I thought, you know what, I need to do something because I've got this platform. I can do television and stuff. Do so many different things. Let me speak for these kids because I'm going to fight for them because they didn't have anybody in the trans community or the LGBT community that was nice to them. They were attacking them. They were sending them hate, death threats every day. And I thought, you know what, someone needs to help these kids. So I thought I have to speak up.
If you could say something to yourself, like if you could look back in time, which of course we wish we could do this sometime, and when you were in the midst of this despair, trying all these surgeries, trying to recreate a new identity, if you could say something to yourself back then, because there are a lot of people right now who are in that position right now, they're struggling with their identity, what would you say now based on what you know to yourself back then?
Right. Well, I know if I would have given myself advice back then, I know I wouldn't have listened because I was so headstrong. And many teens and young people, they're so headstrong. They are firm in their beliefs. If they see something on TikTok or on a TV show, they want to do the latest trends. So, I would just say to all of these young people out there that are struggling with themselves, it seems impossible that you will ever be happy. It seems like you're always going to have this cloud of unhappiness over you because you don't accept yourself. But that happens over time, and it happens in a different point in their life. For me, it happened, I was age 33. Everybody has a different time in their life, but you need to try to rediscover who you are and learn to accept yourself. So there are various ways to help with that. You can go to therapy. You can also do something called reminiscent therapy, which is when you retrace things from your childhood that made you happy. So maybe listening to music from your childhood, watching old movies, visiting a museum that you went to as a kid that rekindles these happy memories of a time when you were happy. And they use this with dementia patients to try and help them rekindle memories. That for me was very helpful. And I would just say to these kids as well, less time on social media. I know it's hard, but when you go on social media, you're constantly seeking validation and you're comparing yourself to these influencers who, by the way, most of them, they're not presenting the real them, It's fake. There's a filter. They're pretending to be happy. It doesn't necessarily reflect their life. So, a lot of what we see online is not even true. So I would just say to kids, don't buy into what you're being sold online, Be independent, be a free thinker, and learn to accept yourself. Go to church, go to therapy, speak to people around you. There's so much support out there. There's so much love in the world. So just try to find happiness from within.
That is great advice. Now, you brought up faith a number of times in church and how you started going to church, and that was part of this. How has faith helped you see yourself differently throughout this process?
So I really needed something in my life to help me change because, it was really going down a slippery slope. I was doing really crazy surgeries to myself. And, the more you do anesthetic, the more risk it is and stuff. So, I could have easily died. There was a surgery where I did nearly die when I had all my chest fat removed. So, I'd been through all that. So it was a now or never moment, Billy. Could continue down my path, losing all my friends, losing my family, and just being self-destructive, or I could actually seek help and guidance. So, I decided to explore the latter, to go to church and to learn, about the teachings of Jesus and, how each one of us are God's creatures. We're all God's creatures, no matter how we look, how we identify, we are God's creatures. So we need to learn to accept that. So part of that faith journey was helping me to accept myself for who I was,
Yeah.
which was the most important thing in order for me to kind of turn my life around and stuff. And then then also speaking with people in the Christian community, speaking to the priests at the church. When they were telling me about these different teachings of Jesus, where he would go out of his way to help someone that was suffering, he would go out of his way to promote kindness and help people. Even if the person wasn't nice to him, he would try and help them. So like there you have the Roman officer that he was, helping the leper man. So he was always helping people that needed help. And nobody else would help the leper man, but Jesus helped him. So, I saw those teachings. I was like, that's a really impactful thing for somebody to do. I should do something like that. Instead of pursuing this pursuit of surgery, 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 trying to change myself, take a step back, learn from what I've done, and try and be a voice of reason in this world.
Absolutely. And now I want to ask you about Riley Gaines, because you've been commenting quite a bit on this. I found it on Thursday very disturbing to watch, from what we see in these videos and from her account, going to the university in San Francisco there, speaking, and then this violence that broke out after. What do you make of that? Because it seems like the intensity of the issue is also creating these moments in which free speech are sort of, it's just eroding, it's disappearing. Whereas for me, if I hear somebody I disagree with, I'm happy to hear them. It doesn't bother me, right? Why do you think this issue in particular right now, that it's getting more and more fiery, and we're seeing those sorts of moments unfold?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We're seeing this everywhere. So every time a woman decides to speak, every time a conservative, like you had Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point founder, he was attacked by trans activists at a university just for giving a speech. So this is an attack on free speech. Books are being cancelled, books are being rewritten. It's like a chapter out of the Communist Manifesto, what's going on, to be honest, because it's the erosion of free speech, it's the erosion of common sense and normality. So, I'm just like you, Billy. I'm happy to debate someone. Somebody can have like the complete opposite view of me. I'm happy to speak to them, and that's what we should be doing. But what happened with Riley Gaines is she was giving a speech about protecting women's sports, because she's a fantastic swimming champion, and she was bombarded and she was actually physically punched by a man in a dress. She was held hostage. She was locked in a room for 3 hours where the trans activists were basically saying very violent threats to her, and they were saying that she had to give them money in order to be released. And what makes that worse, Billy? So not only was that bad, the police did nothing. They didn't arrest a single person, even the person that assaulted Riley. And then the San Francisco State University vice president issued an email to all the students, congratulating them and praising them for being so peaceful, and saying that they were tremendously brave, the people that attacked a woman. So there's an attack on common sense right now, Billy, and we're seeing this time and time again. Conservative commentators, Christians are under attack every day just for talking about their faith. So what we need to do, Billy, we can't just ignore this. Like, a lot of people are scared to speak out because they hate to be called transphobic or bigoted, but it's not transphobic to stick up for a woman that is being assaulted. We all have a duty, men, women, everyone. We need to speak up now, because if we don't speak up, people are going to lose their rights. People are going to lose free speech. And we're seeing all examples across society, and it's very scary.
My last question for you, and I agree with you. I think we need to defend free speech at all costs. And you've been out there exercising your speech. You have this book coming out. What are you hoping to accomplish through the book?
Right, so the book details my personal journey and basically how I hit rock bottom with this identity crisis, how I got there, what led me to that. And, many young people can identify with that because they go through the same feelings. As a teenager, as puberty, you struggle with these things. So I'm helping, people navigate through those struggles and help them find a positive approach to deal with that rather than going down a self-destructive route. And also, a lot of my book is also about, what's going on right now. So we're seeing an attack on parental rights. We're seeing various states taking kids away from the parents in the name of gender identity. We are seeing, women's rights being taken away, like is the case with Riley Gaines. And we are seeing this gender-affirming care system, which is a very modern phenomenon of, 13-year-old kids being placed on very harmful hormones, and they have to be on these hormones in many cases for the rest of their life. So, the book details, what are we doing right now? What is happening to these kids? How are these kids being persuaded that this is what they want to do? So I've got a chapter on TikTok, social media, how the algorithms recognize what the kids' vulnerabilities are, push them videos like that. How school districts, we have drag queen story hours, we have teachers teaching about pronouns and sexuality to kindergartens. So I talk about all that, and I also analyze all of the different state laws right now, which state laws are for this, which state laws are against it, and how parents, how concerned individuals can participate in stopping this. So, speaking at a Senate hearing, which is trying to, if there's a bill being passed about gender affirming care, get everyone there speaking in opposition to the bill so that it doesn't pass. Women speaking up for their rights, men speaking up for them. So it's a book to help everyone. Parents, kids, women, and we need a solution to this, Billy, because it really is the most harmful thing I think that's happening right now to young people.
Well, Oli, I appreciate you sharing with us, and when the book comes out, we'll have you back again. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Billy. God bless you all.